My guest today is a guitarist for one of the legendary rock bands of all time. They just released their self-titled album and are launching their first music cruise. I'd like to welcome from Def Leppard, Phil Collen.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. It's a real pleasure to speak with you. I know it's Sunday morning, sort of taking away some of your weekend, so thank you so much for making some time.
Oh, no worries.
You're like the busiest guy right now. I was thinking about what to ask you about and what to talk to you about, and there's so much. So we're going to have to try and get through as much as possible real quick.
Sure, absolutely.
You got the new Def Leppard album, your Delta Deep project I know you're touring with and doing stuff with. The book just came out. You're touring with Styx and Tesla again coming up, and of course the cruise. So how are you able to juggle all of this right now?
Well, that's actually more than that as well. I literally just got back from Sacramento last night. I'm producing the new Tesla single.
Oh, fantastic!
So, which is really we're thrilled how it's turning out. It's we're having an absolute blast with that. So yeah, that's going really well. So yeah, it's all. I'm always one. I think if you take your foot off the gas and kind of relax too much, people get writer's block. I just think if you're constant with stuff, the people like, Mutt Lange, Prince, people who work all the time, you get to meet them, you go, wow, these people have so much energy, and they do, and it's and there's a reason for that. And I think, it's not good for everyone, obviously, but I actually get more inspired the more I do stuff. So it's kind of, I think, in my case, I think it actually helps me,
Yeah, that's great to be able to do it. So I want to touch on the new album, of course, which is awesome.
Thank you.
It'd been a while since the last record, and so I'm wondering, as you guys were getting ready to put it out, I mean, was there any nervousness or like, are people still going to want to listen to Def Leppard? I mean, was that sort of ever on your minds?
It's really funny. It was the complete opposite of that. We actually really didn't care what anyone thought, because this was I don't want to say selfish, but this album was really for us and specifically for us. I mean, that's why we called it Def Leppard. That's another reason. I think normally, you people they want to please the industry. There's almost a peer pressure thing attached to it, and we had the opposite. We went in to record a single. And came out with like 12 songs in just in a week, actually. 12 ideas for songs, and we got them down very quickly. Within a month, we had, which for us is like, unreal. So we had the first 12 done. We came back in the next session and we added 3 more. One we didn't quite finish off, and so that was it really. So there was absolutely no worry whatsoever. We actually didn't care. Usually when we do an album, we have a concept, we brief ourselves. We'll go, like in the 90s, it was like, it'd be great if we had a pop song that was somewhere between Garbage and the Backstreet Boys, if you could imagine that. And, you have these kind of ideas. With this one, there was absolutely none of that. It was like, bring in whatever you got. I was very heavily involved in the Delta Deep project, recording and stuff. So one of the songs was actually going to be on that, Sea of Love. But, go and several like, wow, this is great. We could do this, and so that's something we wouldn't normally do. Man Enough. I kind of got the idea from that, from 70s funk. So all of these things wouldn't normally have made it on a Def Leppard album. So we actually stopped worrying, and it was just a breeze. It was a joy to do.
I think that it makes for a really fun record to listen to, and it still has some of those prototypical kind of Def Leppard songs. Dangerous is one of my favorites on it. I mean, that's as standard Def Leppard sound as you can get. And
right.
When you're writing a song like that versus maybe sort of a heavier rocker song like All Time High or something, is the approach different? Do you say, well, this is going to be this type of song, so we know we got to do this, or do they sort of just write themselves naturally?
Yeah, they absolutely write themselves naturally. And the other thing about this record, it was done, in the purest way, very much like artists did in the 60s and early 70s, before we had a music industry. There was still, Hendrix, Beatles, Stones, James Brown, Stevie Wonder. They would all write songs and do albums, but David Bowie, they'd get in there for the love of the music and do that. It was only later that, you'd please, like I said, a peer pressure thing. You'd almost be pleasing a record company executive, you had to, meet certain demands and all that stuff. So we didn't really have any of that. So even with the songwriting, that wasn't around at all. And the great thing about the songwriting is that, you start a song and quite often it takes you in a different direction than you originally intended. And that's great. That's what you want. You want it to be kind of wide open. It's great if a song just writes itself and it's done in 5 minutes, but it's really nice if it actually takes you on a journey and kind of suggests other things to you. And that's the whole artistic part about it. And we really had a lot of that with this record. It was great.
With the first single, Let's Go, that's been sort of in a lot of places. I've heard it on different radio stations, on TV shows. I heard it on an ESPN sports talk show, and they even started talking about it as it came on. And it was sort of like, hey, Def Leppard, we haven't heard these guys in a while. This is a great song, all that kind of stuff. Do you find that sort of 80s hair band stigma has now long gone and you're appreciated for just being a great band?
Well, that was always annoying anyway, that kind of thing. We got tagged on, with a lot of lesser bands. This happens with every kind of genre of music. You get roped in. And the whole thing about grunge, which was great when that came out, because it stopped a lot of really awful bands who had no talent, no substance.
Right.
But I don't believe we fit into that situation. We were something way different to that. We were trying to make iconic, albums that sonically would stand the test of time, and even the songs, we actually went about it a different way. So no, I think there's a certain amount of last man stand. A lot of bands that were around just disappeared, and I think there's an integrity that people like about us. They go, wow, these guys are actually the real deal. It's not like we do farewell tours, or we come around and reform and do all that stuff. We've actually constantly been grafting and working the whole time. So I think it gives you a certain integrity that is recognized. And then the fact that we haven't had an album out for so long because we've been busy, and to be quite honest, it wasn't really a high priority because you don't really have to do that anymore. But then that's going along with that business agenda. And with this one, we was like, enough of that. We're artists and we recognize that. I think, we felt that. I certainly did, in everything, all my endeavors, I feel like I'm an artist, with what I was doing yesterday. I mean, yesterday morning I was singing backing vocals, and then it's something else. And it's always, it's exciting and inspiring. I think that's the true test of it. I always, again, when people say, you got any tips? And I'd say, yeah, if you do it for nothing, if you expect no reward, then you're probably going to get rewarded with just the fact that you've got artistic expression. Don't expect to be massive paydays and that. And I really am pleased with where we are. It's just a wonderful thing, and we do get rewarded really nice. Yeah, we do really well again, but that hasn't always been the case. We was in debt. We'd do, half quarter empty arenas, and then all of a sudden everything kind of comes around again. So I think if you stick to your guns artistically, you certainly get rewarded for that. And if you're lucky, then something else happens as well. People actually like you.
Yeah, that was always a thing for me as a fan of the band, that you guys were lumped in with those bands, because I never liked any of those other bands. I always liked the Queen, Beatles, all that kind of stuff, and Def Leppard.
Yeah.
It was never, I never saw myself as a fan of so-called hair bands, and I never understood that correlation. It just was like you guys happened to come out in the same decade.
There's also more to it than that. I mean, I'll give you an analogy. So every genre, let's take the boy band genre from the early or late 90s, early 2000s, or the Britney Spears phenomenon. You had Backstreet Boys, you had NSYNC, then maybe 98 Degrees. This is a funny analogy. And then and they were helped out by, studio execs, songwriters, producers. So everything, all the talent pool, not necessarily the bands. Obviously, Justin Timberlake was hugely talented, but the talent pool focused on those three. So then you'd have a million artists or bands trying to copy that, and business agendas trying to copy that kind of success.
Right.
So it's going to be a really washed out, pale imitation. So that's what you get, and that's really what happened with us. There was us, and there was obviously Bon Jovi, and then everything else was Motley Crue were cool, and then everything else kind of, it was lesser, and it by degrees. And that happens with every genre of music. The grunge thing, same deal. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden.
And then you had about 100 other ones that were all trying to just do the same thing.
Absolutely, not doing the real thing. Same deal with Motown. Barry Gordy getting these pools of talent. Amazing people. And then other things, he would just get great songwriters and make the girl in reception sing it. Martha Reeves was a receptionist, as was Diana Ross. So that's really what goes on, and it's a business. And I think if you can separate the two and you can still be an artist, you're in good standing, I think.
I want to delve a little bit into some of the catalog. One of the things that I always appreciated about your albums was you had the hits and the Pour Some Sugar on Me and Photograph and things like that, but on every album there was one or two sort of epic, intricate songs, Die Hard, The Hunter, Gods of War, White Lightning.
Yeah.
And those were, for me, always the standout tracks above anything. And I always wondered, how did those songs end up on every album? Even on X, you threw in a song like Scar, which is, it doesn't really even match the rest of the album. Was that always like one person that stood up and said, no, we need one of these on here? Or how did those end up on albums?
No, that's great that you've been paying attention, though. That's great. All of those songs, exactly what you said. I think, it balanced it out. We started off as a rock band, and a song like Die Hard, The Hunter, or Billy's Got a Gun really did sound great. And obviously the idea came from, a Zeppelin, a Queen, or the Beatles. They would do that all the time. So we'd just do that in a hard rock format. And funny enough, what would normally happen, when you write a song, you usually do the same kind of thing. There's a hook and there's a melody, and if you're lucky, there's a bridge, and the melody's got to be memorable, and solo's got to be memorable. You've got to be able to hum it. It's great when you go, let's just do a rock song and not do any of that stuff, not actually go about it that way. And I think certainly with Gods of War, I think we hit every note on the fretboard on that song. It would change key, and normally you wouldn't do that. You'd say, well, it's a key change there. Why would we do that? And we'd go, it's a epic rock song. It doesn't matter. People who listen to this isn't going to get played on the radio, and ironically, it actually did in the end. But you would get all these ideas together, and you'd be very open about them. I think there's a little bit of restriction goes on when you're trying to write a song. You're always trying to write the best song ever. You always want to kind of have that. You want to have a pop song that crosses over and all that. But with some of these rock songs, you don't. And I think part of the epicness is stuff that wouldn't work on those songs. So you can actually be a bit more open about it. So when you're doing one of these epic songs, and we love them, I actually, that's why we started doing, Paper Sun on the last US tour.
Yeah.
It was just nice
that was
to
great. I saw
that.
Yeah. Love that song.
Thank you. Yeah. And so that was it really. It was a bit of contrast. It's a bit of light and shade, and it's kind of a relief. It's almost like a tonic, or, like you have comic relief in a horror movie at some point. It's a bit like that, and it's actually really refreshing to do on our part as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that made you guys stand out among a lot of the bands that you guys were out with at the time. Do you have like 3 or 4 over the last many years that are favorites of yours that are not, sort of the more well-known songs?
Well, I love them ones. I think, deep cuts, they're actually really deep cuts. But, we were juggling between Paper Sun and White Lightning on this last tour. We really wanted to put one of them in. We'd done Gods of War the previous tour, and we've done the Viva Hysteria. So I think, the Blind Faith on the new album kind of falls into that category a little bit. So, and they're usually quite difficult to do live, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I think the other problem we have, we have all these songs that people want to hear that have been hits and stuff, so you have to play them.
Yeah. So
it's actually finding a slot. I think even the Paper Sun slot that we just had has probably just been taken out because on the upcoming tour, we've got to add new songs. So that slot's actually been kind of filled, unfortunately, for this tour.
Right. Speaking of the tour, let's jump into that. So you did the tour over the last summer through fall with Styx and Tesla, and you guys are re-upping a few shows with them at the end of this month. So, how is it working with those guys? And I mean, I know you know Tesla for a long time, and obviously you're friends with those guys. So what has that tour been like?
It's great. We get on so well, and same deal with Styx. We've known them guys. They're just absolute gentlemen, and they work really hard. I mean, that's the thing I totally respect about them. A lot of bands kind of, call it a day or whatever. They just try hard. They look great. They eat right. They get on well. They sound amazing. Both bands. So I think that's the thing. Really, it's kind of important to do that. It's just a wonderful trip to have people around you that you like as well. It's kind of it's nice. That's really why we extended it. It was can we take this a little further? We're actually kicking off the Def Leppard album tour, in America, obviously in a couple of days, really. But before that, we were just doing, like I said, we had Paper Sun in the set and stuff. But we kicked off the world tour in Japan in October, and so the new set will
right.
be a bit different, actually.
Oh, great! And there'll be some new songs, I guess you're saying, from the new album on the US. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very cool. Have you noticed sort of more of a younger audience, kids coming to the shows now? I know for my 2-year-old sings Let's Go when we listen to it in the car, which is fantastic. And
there you go.
And are you starting to see more kind of next generation fans there more attending?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see both, and that really was the intention. Even, when we was, and this is a funny age to say, but I remember when we came out with this theory, we said we want to hit everyone from 5 to 50. And, ironically, I'm 58. It's like, wow, and we're still going. So I think that's the thing. It's that if you do want to hit that, you want to get that massive demographic. That means it's crossed over, and also across the racial divide. That was a wonderful thing with the Hysteria album. And like some black artists like Michael Jackson, that crossed over so much that it just become popular music. It wasn't kind of divided into a subgroup or a subgenre or anything like that. So that's always the goal, is to actually just to appeal to as many people as you can all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Let's touch on the book, Adrenalize, which came out a few months ago. A really fun read, covers your time from your start with Girl all the way through your period with Def Leppard through to today. One element that was really interesting is you go back and speak with some older band members and friends, and some of the guys from Def Leppard are in there. How is it going through your past and getting those guys to contribute?
Oh, that was easy. I pretty much speak to all the people in there anyway. So, just over in London, just for Christmas, and I've run into a bunch of my buddies there. So that was kind of nice. Chris Epton said that'd be great if you could get people just to have their take on stuff. So that's just literally what we did. I phoned them up, and everyone was really compliant. They were great. It's really cool.
Delta Deep is covered in there. The story of how that started, which sort of comes in line with how the book idea came about, right? In the chapter where you talk about it. Tell me a little bit about Delta Deep and how that got started and what you have going on with that right now.
Well, I mean, we literally I went to Sacramento 2 days ago, but we'd literally got off of the first leg of our first tour. Actually, we'd done the West Coast leg of the tour, and we recorded a live album.
Oh, cool.
Which is great. But we're going to call it West Coast Live, because I've just been, actually, when you phoned, I was just listening to some of the tracks. They sound unbelievable. Robert DeLeo is just incredible. Debbie Blackwell Cook's a monster, and so is Forrest Robinson on drums. It's like, wow. It's so easy for me to just play over the top. I can be sloppy or whatever, and these guys just carry it off into the sunset. It's great. So it started off. Debbie was my wife Helen's godmother, and she sang at our wedding. And she's 62, and she's got this voice, and everyone, even when we was doing stuff, like, oh my God, it sounds like Tina Turner. Oh my God, it sounds like Etta James. Oh, it's Aretha Franklin. it's that. Now that's my favorite female voice, but she sings louder, like a rock singer, because obviously there's a rock band behind her. So we pretty much started off that way. We've done a little acoustic thing at the Gerson Institute. You know, we auctioned off a guitar, and it was for cancer victims and stuff like that. And you know, a bunch of people said, "Where can we buy this?" And we're like, "What?" And they said, "Well, what you just played." And we're like, "Well, it's just us goofing." So we started writing songs. It started off as a blues thing, and then ended up, way much more. It was Zeppelin. It reminds me of Zeppelin and the Stones. You know, they started off as blues bands,
right,
and ended up being, whatever they were, which was rock and there's a lot of that combination of blues where it came out of the Delta, and then it went Chicago blues, and there was funk and soul, and you had all these people playing the same venues: B.B. King, Little Richard, James Brown, Etta James. They'd all be on the same night sometimes, and so all that music kind of mixed together for me. It was all based on the blues, and so that's really what we're doing. It's not kind of, 1 minute it'll sound like the Temptations, and the next minute it'll sound like Led Zeppelin. And me and Debbie do a lot of duets and stuff, and it's very vocal heavy. It's great, and it's I just get to play guitar, like my heroes when I started playing: Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. It's that kind of thing. I can actually kind of go back to that. So it's really amazing, and we're writing the songs. We're writing new songs all the time. In fact, the new Tesla song was going to be a Delta Deep song again, and played it to the guys, and Brian Wheat said, "Look, we've got to record this, and you got to produce it." So and it's turned out amazing. I'm so thrilled. That's going to be really fun. That. So yeah, no, it's inspiring, and it's like I said, the more you get around different people that are inspired, it just kind of rubs off.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a blues sort of vibe on there, but there's some good burners on there. I mean, like the last track, Mistreated, with Joe singing a little bit on there, right? I mean, that's a good sort of hard rock track. I mean, the guitar sound doesn't sound different really than what you normally sound like even at times.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's gonna have that thing, you recognize the voice and all that in the guitar playing. So yeah, it's just a slightly different, version of it. It's coming from the same place, and the recording process is obviously very different.
Yeah,
it's a lot of first take stuff. And again, this live thing, I'm blown away. It's like, wow, even the recording of it, which was done by Ryan Williams, who works with Stone Temple Pilots. So he's amazing, and so I'm really thrilled about that. He's going to be mixing it over the next few weeks, and then I guess we'll put that out probably sometime in the summer.
Very cool. Lastly, let's touch on the cruise a little bit, which happens at the end of this week out of Miami. What sort of crazy stuff do you guys have planned? I mean, are you going to do something like play the whole High and Dry from beginning to end, or what's going on that thing?
No, we're just going to be, it'd be the same thing. It's just a prelim to the tour. So we may try out a couple of new songs from the album, and the rest of the time, you still have to do a set. So people, because people are on a cruise, they're hardcore fans. So you've got to do all your photographs, you pour some sugars, let's get rocked. You've got to do all of that. So again, that kind of starts taking care of what else you can put in the set. But it'd be really nice to do that. Me and Debbie Blackwell Cook are doing an acoustic Delta Deep thing. Cool. We're doing a performance, so that'd be fun. But so I've never actually even been on a cruise, so I have no idea what to expect.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's sort of the new thing. There's these music cruises. I've been on a few for, prog rock that they've had, and Yes has a cruise, and you start to go on all these things, and they're a blast. They're just a lot of fun. So I think everybody will have a great time. So Phil, it's been a real pleasure and an honor to speak with you today. I'm a huge fan, as you can probably tell, so I really appreciate you taking the time, and I look forward to seeing you back on tour after the cruise.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks, Phil.
Really good time.
Have a great time on the ship.
All right, cheers. Thanks.
All right, bye. Thanks to Phil for the interview. For upcoming news and interviews, please check theprogreport.com. Follow us on Facebook at The Prog Report on Twitter, or download the podcast on iTunes. Thanks.